Here's a strange kind of unhappiness, the kind that nobody feels sorry for. You have a job you're good at. The pay is solid. People trust you. On paper, this is the thing that you are working toward. And still, somewhere underneath all of it, a quiet question keeps surfacing. Is this it? Is this where I'm supposed to stay? And the moment you let yourself feel that, a second voice shows up, sharper, a little embarrassed, that says, "What's wrong with you? Do you know how many people would trade places with you in a heartbeat?" So you push it back down. And you do that for a month, a quarter, maybe even a couple of years. Here's what I want to give you today: not permission to quit, and not a lecture about gratitude, something more useful than either one. A way to actually tell the difference between a job that's wrong for you and a life that's quietly outgrown it. Because those two things feel almost identical from the inside, and we treat them as the same problem, but they're not. By the end of this, you'll have a way to find out which one you're living without gambling your paycheck to do it. I'm Brett Ingram, and this is Optimize, a show built on one idea. Real optimization isn't about squeezing more out of your day. It's about building a life that's actually yours. Let's get into it. So the question on the table today is one of the most common ones I hear, and one of the loneliest to sit with. How do I know if I should leave a job I'm actually good at? Not a toxic job, not a job that's crushing you, a decent one, maybe even an enviable one. That's exactly what makes this so hard to think clearly about. And it's why most of the advice out there is useless for the person actually living it. Now, I want to slow this down with you because I think the way most of us frame this question is broken from the start. And once we fix the frame, the answer gets a lot less mysterious. So there's a specific texture to the tension, right? It's not misery, it's just a low hum. Monday doesn't fill you with dread, it just fills you with nothing. You're not excited, you just feel a little bit flat. And so you're sort of in the trap of a good problem because nothing is visibly broken, and you feel like you forfeited the right to be dissatisfied because there's nothing broken, especially if you talk to people and they're complaining about their jobs. They don't like their jobs, or their jobs aren't as prestigious or high paying as yours. So you don't really talk about it. You don't talk to your partner about it. You don't talk to your friends about it because maybe they'd love your salary. And that's a problem. It's a double bind, because if you stay and you stay quiet, then it keeps eating at you. If you say it out loud, then you sound ungrateful or like you're having a crisis. So that makes it really challenging. I was in a role years and years ago where everything on paper looked right. I was on an upward trajectory. People in the company really liked me. I was doing well. I was successful. I really liked the people that I worked with. But I didn't feel like the ceiling of where I was going to match with the ambitions that I had. So I set out to do something different, but it was difficult. There were a lot of second guessing along the way because there's fear also. If I were to change, maybe I move into something that's worse. Maybe I go to a company that I don't like. Maybe I move into a company and then I get laid off or something bad happens, and then I'll regret ever having left. So that's really difficult. That role can look really good from the outside, but feel hollow on the inside. And that's the real challenge if you feel that. So when was the last time that you felt genuinely like yourself at work? Not competent, not productive, like yourself, like you could really be you. If you have to think hard about the answer, sit with that, because that might be a clue. Now, the reason that this is so confusing isn't that you're indecisive. It's that you're asking the wrong question. Most people frame this as, is this job good enough? And by any reasonable measure, the answer is yes, which is exactly why you're stuck. You keep running the audit on the job keeps passing, and you keep feeling the same way. The problem isn't your answer, it's that you're auditing the wrong thing. Here's the reframe. The job may not have changed at all. You changed. What you need from your work at 42 is not what you needed at 30. The role didn't get worse, the fit got looser. And a loose fit is much harder to notice than a bad one. So there's actually a name for why the mildly wrong thing is so sticky. Psychologists have a concept called the region beta paradox. It describes a strange truth about human beings. We often recover faster from intensely bad experiences than we do from mildly bad ones. Because when something is acutely painful, It trips an alarm. We act, we change, we get out. But when something is only mildly wrong, no alarm goes off. There's nothing dramatic enough to force a decision. So we adapt, we tolerate, and we can tolerate low grade wrong fit for years. The term comes from a 2004 paper by the psychologist Daniel Gilbert and his colleagues with the almost perfect title, The Peculiar Longevity of Things Not So Bad. Sit with that phrase for a second. The peculiar longevity of things not so bad. That's the good enough job. It's not bad enough to leave, and that's precisely the trap. You know, if you're in a job that feels miserable, you're much more likely to quit. If you're in a relationship that feels miserable, you're much more likely to break up. But if things are just good enough, and especially if externally they look good enough, it makes it really difficult because you can be stuck in that situation for a long time because every individual day along the way is survivable. You're not in crisis mode. So that comfort itself, the knowing, the familiarity, the confidence that you can keep doing it is the anesthetic. It's the thing that keeps you feeling okay. The salary, the competence, the routine, they aren't the reward for staying. They're the reason that you stop asking the question. So that is what makes things really difficult because this is not a character flaw. Staying in fine is the default human setting. Naming it is how you get your agency back. So is your job actually bad, or is it just not bad enough to make you deal with it? So if the standard audit, is this job good enough, keeps giving you an answer that doesn't match how you feel, then we need a different set of questions. Not questions about the job. We need questions about the fit between the job and the life that you're actually living now. When you finally let this question out in the open, the culture hands you two ready-made answers and want to argue that both of them are traps. The first script is, life is short, follow your passion, you only get one shot, go. It's seductive, right? And it's on every motivational feed you've ever scrolled. The second script is the exact opposite. Don't be reckless, be grateful. Plenty of people would kill for what you have, grow up and stay. Here's what both of them have in common. They're both ways to skip the work. One tells you to leap without looking, the other tells you to stop looking altogether. Neither one asks the actual question, which is, what specifically is going on here and what would it take to find out? So the follow your passion can be great advice in terms of trying to find direction, but it's not really practical advice in a lot of cases. And studies show that passion actually comes as the result of investment, not the other way around. So you don't find the passion and then pursue it. You pursue something and that helps you develop the passion. So just quit and chase the dream has ended a lot of good careers and funded very few good lives. If we talk about the be grateful side of it, I mean, gratitude is real and it's worth practicing. It's actually been proven to change your brain chemistry. But it gets weaponized into a gag order. We aren't allowed to complain about anything because that shows we're not grateful. And if we're not grateful, we must be greedy. So being grateful for something and having outgrown it are not mutually exclusive. You can be thankful for a job and still know that it's no longer yours. So we want to settle somewhere in the honest middle. The goal isn't to leap and it isn't to numb out. It's to get information before you get a verdict. So which of those two scripts do you reach for first and who taught it to you? Your default script is usually inherited, not chosen. So let's replace both scripts with something that you can actually use. I call it the quiet audit. Not because it's secret, because it's the opposite of a dramatic burn it down decision. It's 4 questions and then 1 move, and none of them require you to quit anything to get started. Question 1, am I bored or am I misaligned? These feel the same, but they're not. And the distinction matters more than almost anything else here. Boredom is usually a problem that you can solve inside a job. A new project, a harder challenge, a different team, a skill you haven't stretched in a while. Misalignment is different. Misalignment is when the work itself, done well, still points away from what you now care about. You can fix boredom with a change of scenery. You can't fix misalignment with a promotion. So if you feel like I could do this in my sleep and I want a bigger mountain, maybe you're just bored. And if you got that bigger mountain right where you are, you'd be happy. If you're thinking, even when I do this brilliantly, even when people are, lavishing me with praise and I'm getting promotions, it's costing me something I'm no longer willing to pay, then that's where it's time for a change because clearly there's not alignment there. So let's run a quick test. Imagine your dream version of this exact job. Best boss, best pay, best project. Does that fix it? If it does, then you're bored, and that's often solvable where you are. If the dream version still feels wrong, that's alignment, and no internal move is going to touch that. So if your job got 20% better tomorrow, would that actually change anything? Okay, question 2. Is this a wrong job or a changed season? So sometimes the job isn't wrong and it never was. You're just in a different chapter than the one that you signed up for. A role that fit the person building a career at 30 can stop fitting the person raising kids or recovering from a loss or hungry for meaning at 45. And so to lower the stakes here, this no longer fits is not the same as this was a mistake. This is an important distinction. You can be in a position where it's time for a change, but it doesn't mean that where you are was a mistake to be in the first place. Because the past does not have to be wrong. It could be the thing that you did to develop and to evolve to where you are. Oftentimes we get stuck in a narrative of, oh, I wasted years. And that keeps people frozen too, because it's the fear that you're acknowledging that when you don't have to. You can recognize and you can relish in the fact that all the steps in your career have been stepping stones to get you where you are. Even if they don't all line up in a linear fashion, I can draw from experiences in every career move I've had, and I've had a lot, that all are part of who I am and what I do today. And you will do the same thing. And so there's value in it regardless. So you should feel relieved because this isn't about being upset about something that maybe we've outgrown. We can love something and we can still outgrow it. Both can be true. Question 3, what am I actually staying for? And is it a reason or a fear? Now, this is the honest one because most of us tell ourselves we're staying for good reasons when we're often staying to avoid a feeling. There are 4 anchors that hold people in place, and it's worth naming which ones are holding you. The first is money, the golden handcuffs. The second is identity. Who am I if I'm not this? The third is loyalty to a team, a boss, a version of yourself who'd feel like a quitter. And the fourth is simply comfort, the deep, quiet pull of the known. When we are at a certain level of financial success, it can feel trapping in a particular career because it's difficult to then change. In most cases, when we do that, we're going to take a step back financially. So what's important to distinguish, though, is that the trap isn't the salary itself. It's the lifestyle that's built to consume it. So if we're living at our means, now if we leave, it feels impossible because we aren't able to maintain the same lifestyle. When in reality, it might only be inconvenient. We might have to give up a couple of things, might not be that big of a deal. So it might be worth asking, is it actually the money or is it the life that the money is funding that's the issue? And then there's the sunk cost piece. Nobody likes to invest in something and then feel like they got no value out of it. I put 12 years in. That's not a reason to stay another 12. Those 12 are behind you, they're gone. That's what we mean by sunk costs, because they're already spent no matter what you do. And there's very solid behavioral science work on this. So the more that we've invested, the harder it is to walk away, even when walking away is a smart move. This is often equated to business investments and financial things, but the same thing applies to our career and our life and the way we spend our time and our years. So feeling wasteful is not the same as being wrong to leave. And then there's the whole identity piece. I was talking to another podcaster and he said he has people on his show and he always asks them, who are you? And they always lead with the same thing. Well, I'm a sales professional. I do this. I do. They talk about what they do for a living. They talk about their career. And he says, no, no, no. Beneath that, take the job away. Imagine you did something totally different. Who are you? And what he's trying to get at is, who are you underneath all of that? But so many of us tie our identity to our career or our job or our vocation that it's hard to distinguish. And so in the movie Up in the Air, George Clooney, he's a man whose entire self is built around his job and his frequent flyer miles. And as the movie goes, he slowly realizes that the structure that he's optimized is hollow. So yes, from the externally, he lives an optimized life. But when we start to think about that and pull that back, the reason we don't want to is because the underlying question is, who am I without this? And that is scary. So then there's the loyalty and the comfort. These are real and they're worth honoring. When we have people that we trust, when we have people that have invested in us, people that believe in us, it's difficult to leave that behind. And we don't want to let those kinds of people down. But we also have to be honest about, whether those are choices or if they're hiding places, because the fact is, people ultimately have to do what's right for them. If it's holding you back, if you have to sacrifice to provide for other people what you think they want from you, and to stay in that, then that's not a win-win. And people that really care about you wouldn't want you to do that either. So if money and the other people's opinions were completely off the table, would you still be here? Ask yourself that question, because whatever came up first, that's your data. Question 4, and this is the one that actually breaks the paralysis. What could I learn about this without quitting? Because here's the mistake almost everybody makes. We treat this as a thinking problem. We believe that if we just reflect hard enough, journal long enough, lie awake long enough, the answer will finally become clear, and then we'll act. Sorry, but it doesn't work that way. There's a body of research on career change from Herminia Ibarra, a professor at London Business School, and her central finding cuts against everything we're taught. We don't think our way into a new direction. We act our way into it. Her phrase is that you act your way into a new way of thinking. Clarity is not the thing that you get before you move. Clarity is what movement produces. You take a small step, you notice how it feels, and that is the information that you couldn't get from inside your own head. So this doesn't mean quit to find yourself. You don't need to go on a sabbatical. You don't need to go on a self-exploration journey. It means run tiny reversible experiments. Take the adjacent project. Have 3 conversations with people doing the thing you're curious about. Shadow somebody, teach a workshop. Spend 1 weekend actually doing the work you fantasize about instead of fantasizing about it. The point of experiment isn't to succeed, it's to gather real feeling data. Sometimes the fantasy dies on contact, and that could be a gift. It hands you back your current job with fresh eyes. Sometimes it lights up, and now you know. There's a song from Harry Chapin, famous musician. Love a lot of his music. But it's about Mr. Tanner. And he's a guy that owns a dry cleaning shop in the Midwest, but he also is a really good singer. And everybody tells him what a great singer he is when they hear him singing in the shop. So they try to push him to go and, have a Broadway debut. But there's a line in the song that says, music was his life. It was not his livelihood. And that's an important distinction also. Sometimes the things that we love because we do them voluntarily when we want. If it were a job, if it were something we had to do, we may not feel the same way about that. So what's important here is to get your agency back so you aren't trapped between stay miserable and leap blind, because that's a really, really big, wide chasm to try to navigate. We want to be in the middle where we can find out without all of that risk. So what's the smallest experiment that would teach you something real in the next 2 weeks? Okay, so here's the practice. For the next 2 weeks, I want you to do a quiet audit. It's small, it's private, and it asks nothing of you but attention. First, track your energy, not your hours. At the end of each day, note one moment that gave you energy and one that drained it. Don't analyze it, just log it. After 2 weeks, patterns show up that no amount of overthinking would have ever revealed. You're looking for one thing. Are the draining moments the actual work or the stuff around it? Because the distinction that changes everything is that if the core work consistently drains you, that's an alignment issue. If it's the politics, your boss, the commute, one difficult person, the meetings, that's fixable. And you can often do that without leaving. Now, the second half of the practice. Notice when you feel most like yourself in a given day, at work or outside it. Just notice that most yourself signal is pointing somewhere, and it's worth following the direction it points. And then one move. Before the 2 weeks are up, run a single small experiment, one conversation, one project, one afternoon spent doing the thing you're curious about. Not to decide, to learn. You're not trying to answer the big question this month. You're just refusing to keep asking it in the dark. That's the whole practice. Track your energy. Notice when you're most yourself. Run one small experiment. It costs you nothing. It risks nothing. And it'll teach you more in 2 weeks than 2 years of lying awake at 3 a.m. ever has. So this may or may not be illuminating in a way that's comforting to you. And that's the risk. But it will be illuminating regardless. And it will give you that honesty. And it will give you that feedback that you need so you can really start answering that question. And so, this isn't individualized, financial, career, or mental health advice. It's just a way of thinking that reframes the way that we typically go about our normal days, live our normal lives, and work our normal jobs. And so we want to be careful that we're not trying to optimize our way to a perfect job that doesn't exist. Every path has its cost. The question is never, how do I remove all the friction, but rather, which set of trade-offs actually fits the life I want? So the aim here was never to make the decision for you. It was to make sure that whatever you decided it with your eyes open, from information, not from fear, and not from a script that somebody handed you. So that quiet question that surfaces when everything looks fine, is this it? Here's what I hope you take with you. That question is not a threat, and it's not ingratitude. It's information. It means some part of you is still paying attention to the gap between the life you're living and the life that would actually fit you. It's not a problem to silence. It's a compass, and it's a gift that most people spend years learning to ignore. You don't have to quit tomorrow. You don't have to be grateful into silence. You just have to stop answering an inside question with outside numbers. So here's the one thing to carry out of this. A job that's good enough for anyone still might not be the right fit for you. And the only way to find out is to stop thinking about it and start quietly to test it. You're allowed to have loved something and outgrown it. You're allowed to find out. Start small. Start this week. If this episode sparks something for you, subscribe for more, share it with a friend, and leave a rating and review so it helps us reach more optimizers like you. Until next time, remember, optimize your life, not just your output.